There's a doll standing at the foot of my daughter's bed. It's humming. Her bed is empty. The card that came with her listed 5 rules for keeping her. I've broken 3 of them since we moved in, and I never understood what the last one was for. Tonight I do. There's a 6th line on that card. It was smudged past reading when we found it. Tonight, for the first time, every word on it is legible. The house on Alder Court had changed hands 6 times since the 80s, and the price kept dropping every time it came back on the market, and I told myself that was the only reason we could afford it. Moving day. Boxes stacked in a hallway that still smelled like someone else's air freshener. Ellie ran the length of the empty living room twice just to hear her sneakers squeak on the bare floor. 7 years old and thrilled that her new room was bigger than the old one. 6 months out of a divorce, I needed this house to be the fresh start I'd promised her, and a decent 3-bedroom on a quiet cul-de-sac at that price felt like the first thing that had gone right in a year. The realtor Denise had walked us through it a week earlier, and every time I asked why it kept coming back on the market, she said some version of the same thing. Fresh coat of paint fixes most things. She said it 3 separate times, cheerful each time like it was the first. I didn't notice the pattern until much later. The other houses on Alder Court had lived-in yards, trampolines, basketball hoops, a wind chime. Ours had a for sale sign leaning in the garage, unsold and forgotten, like the last owners hadn't bothered to take it down. The house settled that first night the way old houses do, a long tired creak somewhere in the frame like it was getting comfortable with us in it. I told Ellie it was just the wood cooling down. She believed me because she was 7 and I was her dad, and that's what dads are for. On the second day, Ellie found the crawlspace access panel behind the sliding door of her closet. A plywood square, painted the same white as the wall, easy to miss unless you were 7 and looking for somewhere to hide. She pried it open with a butter knife before I could tell her not to. Inside, pushed back against the crawlspace joists, was a steamer trunk. Small, the kind meant for a doll's clothes, not a person's. Someone had left it behind on purpose, or in a hurry, and either way nobody had come back for it in a long time. Inside the trunk was a doll. Blue gingham dress, faded almost grey, hand stitching at the neck like someone had repaired a tear a long time ago. One eye was glass. The other had been replaced at some point with a flat black button, sewn on crooked, and that crookedness is the kind of detail you don't forget once you've seen it. Taped to the inside of the trunk lid was an index card. The handwriting wasn't rushed. Whoever wrote it took their time, like they needed to get it exactly right. 5 rules, numbered in the same careful hand. Keep her on the top shelf, facing the door. Don't let her hear you say she's ugly. If she's on the floor in the morning, leave her be. But if she's on the floor at night, leave her exactly where she landed until sunrise. Don't touch her. Never give her a new name. And if she starts humming, get the child and leave the house until morning. There was a 6th line under the 5th. Water had gotten to it at some point. I could make out a comma and half a letter and nothing else. I want to say I threw the whole thing out that afternoon. I didn't. Ellie loved her instantly, the way kids love the objects adults find unsettling. And there's a particular kind of tired that makes a single dad put a strange doll on a shelf just to end an argument before it starts. I screwed the shelf bracket into the wall myself that weekend, angled so it could only ever face one way, toward the door. Exactly like the card said. For about 2 weeks, nothing happened, and I mean that literally nothing. We unpacked. Ellie started at her new school and came home the first week with a friend's phone number written on her hand in marker, which felt like a good sign. I met the neighbor 2 doors down, an older woman named Mrs. Okafor, who'd lived on the cul-de-sac since before any of the current houses had their current families in them. She waved at me over her fence one evening and said, "Welcome," and then, almost as an afterthought, asked how long we planned on staying. I laughed it off, a little too fast. Told her we'd just moved in and that we planned on staying a good long time. She didn't laugh back. She just said, "That's what everyone says," and went back to her garden like she hadn't meant anything by it. The first rule I broke without thinking. I was on the phone with my brother, venting about the move, the house, the divorce, all of it, and I said the doll on Ellie's shelf was, and I'm quoting myself, ugly as sin. I was in the hallway outside Ellie's room. The door was open. The next morning the doll was facing the wall. Not dipped, not fallen, turned, cleanly, 90 degrees, the same way you turn a chair. I checked the bracket myself with my hands before I did anything else, because I needed there to be an explanation, and there wasn't one. That bracket does not swivel. I built it. I know exactly how it moves, and the answer is, it doesn't. The rolling and the mourning. I asked Ellie if she'd moved it. She got upset, really upset, more than the question warranted, and said no, and then said something that stuck with me longer than it should have. She said, "You're not supposed to touch her either, Dad." I hadn't told her that rule. She'd read the card herself. The second rule broke on its own, or I broke it, depending on how you want to look at it. Ellie called me into her room at 11 at night because the doll was on the floor, on its back, arms straight at its sides like it had been laid down rather than dropped. The card said leave her exactly where she landed until sunrise. I picked her up anyway, because my daughter was standing in the doorway crying, and I wasn't going to leave a doll on the floor of her room until morning while she stared at it. I put it back on the shelf myself. That night, something moved through the crawl space behind the closet wall. Slow, heavy for something that size, dragging rather than walking, tracing a line from the access panel toward the wall behind Ellie's headboard and stopping there. I lay awake in the hallway outside her door until it got light. By then I'd stopped telling myself it was the house settling. I told myself something dumber instead, that we'd just gotten unlucky with a weird piece of furniture and an old superstition somebody left behind as a prank on the next family. I decided the fix was simple: get rid of the doll. I drove her across town to a donation drop-off, the kind with a metal bin and a handwritten sign, and I put her in myself, and I watched the lid swing shut. That was the third rule I'd broken: keep her on the top shelf, facing the door, and I carried her off it and thrown her away. And I felt, for about 6 hours, genuinely fine, like I'd solved something. I came home to find her back on the shelf, facing the door, exactly where I'd screwed the bracket, exactly the way the card said to keep her, except now there was crawlspace dust ground into the hem of her dress, the same grey dust that coated the joist behind Ellie's closet, and there is no version of a donation bin 40 minutes across town that explains that dust being there. She hadn't come back through the front door. I would have seen her. I stood in that doorway a long time, and I still don't fully know what I was looking at. If this is already getting under your skin, there's a new one of these here every night. Subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. I stopped trying to explain it, and started trying to understand it instead. Mrs. Okafor was the one who finally gave me somewhere to look, not because she wanted to, but because I pushed. She told me the house had changed hands 6 times since 1988, and every family that left had a young daughter, and every family left within a year, and then it would sit empty and unsellable, until the price dropped enough for the next family to talk themselves into it, and none of them ever gave the same reason twice for going. In 1988, the family who'd lived there before all the others had a daughter. She drowned in the creek behind the property that same summer, 8 years old, and by Mrs. Okafor's telling, her mother never left the house again, not once, not for groceries, not for the funeral, until the day she finally sold it and disappeared from the cul-de-sac entirely. Mrs. Okafor always figured it was grief. Looking back, I don't think it was. I think that woman spent every day in that house, standing guard over something, and I think she only left when she'd lost. I found the girl's name myself 2 nights later, in a floorboard I only pulled up because it had been rocking under my foot for a week, and I finally got sick of it. A folded newspaper clipping, brittle at the creases, tucked flat underneath, like someone had hidden it there on purpose, instead of throwing it away. The girl's name was Dinah. One line in the article stopped me cold. When they pulled her from the creek, her right fist was closed so tight they had to work the fingers open, and inside there was a single black button, the same dull black as a Coke button. No shirt or coat it could have come from, ever found on her or near the water. I know exactly what that button looks like now. It's sewn crooked onto a doll's face 2 rooms away from where I'm standing. There was a second piece of paper folded inside the clipping, torn ragged instead of cut, the handwriting nothing like the careful print on the rules card. Fast, pressed hard enough to tear the paper twice. It said, "She is not Dinah anymore. She only knows her name. Do not say it back to her." Ellie had been calling the doll Dinah for 11 days. I checked my phone, because I take pictures of everything, and there's a video from the second week in the house, Ellie narrating a tea party, and she says the name clear as anything, twice, and I never once told her to call it that. I never told her a name at all. When I asked her where she got it, she said it the same way she'd say her own name if you asked her. She said it just came to her. She wasn't scared when she said it. That's the part one can't stop thinking about. I understood the 4th rule differently after that. Never give her a new name. It was never about being polite to a sad little girl. It was about not confirming a name back to something that was still just guessing at it, still trying it on. Any name you said to it, it took as its own, one you invented for it, or the one it half remembered. So a new name and Dinah were never 2 different mistakes. They were the same one. Dinah was only the name it had already gotten closest to. It's so effing natural. I told myself I would, the next morning, once Ellie had somewhere else to sleep, once I'd figured out how to explain any of this to anyone who'd believe me. That gap between deciding and leaving is where the rest of this happened. For 3 nights after that, I heard humming. Faint, always right at the edge of sleep. Gone the instant I sat up to listen for it properly. A slow tune, with no words, that I never once heard clearly enough to recognize. I told myself it was the pipes. I'd stopped believing my own explanations by then, but I kept making them anyway, because the alternative was doing something about it, and I didn't know what that something was. On the 4th night, the humming didn't stop when I sat up. It got clearer. I was in the hallway outside my own room in under 10 seconds. Checking my room first out of pure animal instinct before I understood the sound was coming from further down the hall, and Nellie's door was open, and the doll was standing, not sitting, not propped. Standing at the foot of her bed, facing her pillow, and the bed was empty, sheets thrown back like she'd left in a hurry, or been taken in one. The card was on the floor by the closet, face up, and for the first time since we'd found it, every line on it was legible, including the 6th one, the one that had always been water damaged past reading. It said, "Do not let her finish the song." The humming was coming from the closet. I got the panel open with my hands, no knife. Didn't feel it tear the skin at the time. Ellie was sitting in the crawl space exactly where the dust trail from the doll's hem had always led, knees pulled up, the card from the bedroom floor now balanced flat on her knees, a pencil in her hand. And there was new handwriting on that card now, a 7th line in her handwriting, though she told me afterward, calm as anything, that she didn't remember writing it. I didn't read it. I've never been able to make myself read it. She was humming along under her breath, not scared, somewhere else. I said her name. Her real name. Twice, loud, and on the 2nd time she blinked like she was surfacing from underwater. And she looked at me the way she used to look at me before any of this. Her right fist was closed. When I finally got her to open it in the car, there was nothing inside, just 4 small crescents pressed into her palm, where her own nails had been digging in, deep enough to leave marks that took 2 days to fade, in the exact shape of something small she'd been gripping and wasn't anymore. I grabbed her out of that crawl space so fast I put my shoulder into the doorframe on the way out, and didn't feel that either. We left everything. Clothes still in the dryer, dishes in the sink, the doll standing at the foot of the bed, facing whatever direction it wanted to face. We were in the car by 4 in the morning, and I didn't look back at the house once. Not because I was strong about it, because I was afraid of what I'd see in the window if I did. We've got a new place now, across town, small and rented and nothing special. And Ellie sleeps fine there, and I mostly do too. Except on the nights the wind does something to the gutters that sounds almost like a tune. If this one's going to keep you up tonight, subscribe. I post a new story every night. Alder Court went back on the market 9 weeks after we left. I know because I drove past it once, told myself I just wanted to see it, one last time, to prove to myself it was only ever a house. There was a moving truck in the driveway, and the new family carrying boxes in, a mom, a dad, a little girl about Ellie's age, running ahead of them into the house, laughing at something none of the adults could hear. Through the front window, for 1 second before the truck pulled forward and blocked my view, I saw a shelf, and on it, already facing the door, already waiting, her. Nobody had unpacked yet, nobody had carried her in.